What's up, Bozing MMA here. Today we're going over the White House card. I think it's gonna be it's a cool idea. I think it might be a fun card, maybe, but I think there's a lot of concerns that will actually backfire. There's more bad than there is good for this card, and today we're gonna talk about it a little bit. And I do say it's a cool idea because if you look at these renderings, this was all the way in September. Jeez, time's flying. So if we look at these renderings, right? We have this whole section in front of the White House with the cage and all that, the big screens, the seats, the 5,000 seats that they're going to have. And then this is the outer view with all the effects. And the Lincoln Memorial weigh-ins. And then Dana White's also saying how they're going to walk out at the Oval Office now. Very, very cool concept. But I think there's a lot of downsides to this. First up, Donald Trump saying that there's going to be 8 to 9 title fights. Donald Trump doesn't know shit, obviously, about what the UFC is doing. He's not in the room. But 8 to 9 title fights. And same thing with John Ennick, 6 or 7 undisputed title fights contested. He says undisputed titles contested at the White House. And he says there's only 2 title fights booked for 2026. Obviously, Kayla Harris and Amanda Nunes is off now, but Volk and Diego Lopez 2, UFC 325, and then the interim Gaethje Pimblett main event 326, Holloway Oliveira BMF. And he says because of those factors that there's not enough, he could see those champions being cleared. He says February is no numbered events, and you have April and May. A lot of champions are going to be available. Even then, I think you're going to have to hold out fights. You're going to have to water down maybe the April Miami card, which I don't think they're going to do. May as well, wherever they're going. Maybe they go to Japan or something, or stay in the U.S. But especially after a BMF headline card, you have to have some stacked up fight cards because it's not a real title. Yes, it's an amazing fight, Charles Max 2, but it's not a real title fight. And if you put all these titles, which I don't think they're going to do, on the card, you're going to fuck up the rest of the year. It's going to be drawn out. It's going to be just stale. It's going to be way too long. And also, I was thinking maybe they do some it's going to make title, drawn out no titles the rest of the year, less. And the fighter's going to have to fight less because sometimes if you fight in June, some fighters, they can only fight again in January, February. That's also to do with scheduling, but also their bodies and all that. And I think they also, if they do have these number of title fights, it might be the USA Patriot belt, the Medal of Honor belt, the Freedom, the Nobel Prize, whatever. Shit like that. They might make up stupid belts, more gimmick belts for this card, which I think is very dumb. So, again, I think there should only be at most 3 title fights. Just 300, at most 3 title fights. At most. And one of them could be a BMF if Max makes a quick turnaround or Charles wants to make a quick turnaround. One of those guys. But 3 max title fights, even 2 I think is fine for this. I think 2. Next up, Dana White rejecting Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler at the White House. This would be a way to make it. I think this is also leading to have more title fights there because if you reject Conor, Chandler, who's rejecting Conor fighting Michael Chandler, not Conor fighting, but it's again who's Conor going to fight still. And then same thing, leaves door open for John Jones and Alex Pereira, but at 205 he was talking about, and he said, can I count on John Jones? Pereira already said no go to the White House, he might be trolling. John Jones, of course, Dana White said no, which I agree with. So this is kind of drawing less of these, because you get a headline a card with Pereira, Jones, and then Conor and somebody else, and then have the rest of regular fights. That could be a pay-per-view or numbered event by itself, but this makes it more, if they're not having these fights on the card, makes it more leaning into a stack it up with title fights, which I hope they don't do. But on to the next point. Dana White broke down the logistics. We already kind of had an idea of this, but saying there's going to be 5,000 people in the venue with the rest of the audience watching outdoors without a ticket. So there's going to be 5,000 people live on the White House lawn. And then across the street is this park. It's called the Ellipse. We have 85,000 people there. I think that's a recipe for disaster. And then there's going to be no tickets. Tickets will not go on sale to the general public. So it's so there's going to be no tickets. There's going to be a very stale atmosphere, in my opinion. It's going to suck because all these government officials are usually, or if there's celebrities, there's older people. They're not going to be ooh-ah, screaming, clapping, doing these chants that they do at these UFC events. Very hype. I think the atmosphere might be a little stale. Maybe you get some sound from the fucking Ellipse. I think the Ellipse is just is not too far from the White House. Maybe you hear some sound from that, but I think the atmosphere could be very stale and it's gonna be a little shitty, you know. So, I mean, it just is very. I think it's a backfire, especially with 85,000 people. That's means for like some bad shit to happen, like a mass shooting. You're gonna have these officials out in the public, all of them together. Don't think someone has an idea to go blow shit up. You never know. So I think it's also means for something bad like that. And then on to the next point. I think it reinforces these fighters being used as like tools and just methods of business, not really being their own person. Because you see the top story, it's all about the White House, White House, White House, White House, White House. It's never like, usually most cards it's like, oh, it's a Islam JDM, it's Islam moving up, which does kind of put it into perspective. I think this is gonna make it even worse, and to see fighters as a tool to bring in eyes to this event, not really putting eyes on the fighters, rather putting eyes on the event, and these fighters kind of being a tool just to get more eyes in the UFC and get these big numbers, drawing these big numbers like a McGregor, but in more so McGregor being his own person. It's not really that. It's like the promotion, the UFC and the White House doing something rather than Conor McGregor being this big name for the UFC. If you kind of understand what I'm saying, it's like the focus is more on the event and it being at the White House rather than who's fighting. You know, you kind of understand what I'm saying. So I think it reinforces the fighters being as tools, and like we already know what Dana does with these fighters that he doesn't like, that don't bring in eyes or don't talk shit or aren't the most entertaining. He kind of just throws them off to the side, like a Lerone, like a Ballon on their big fight win streaks, a Movzar, guys like that. So I think it's kind of like that. It just reinforces the idea that fighters are tools for the company, and they don't really care about the fighters as much as instead of them bringing money, you know. They don't like fighters who, like I said, aren't entertaining or stand up for themselves. They don't like fighters who kind of kiss ass and bring eyes to the company. I think it could reinforce that, like it's already doing with the Paramount deal. How they have Diego Lopez, Paddy Pimblett fighting for titles, and they really do not deserve it. Again, for Diego Lopez at least. I think this is going to push them even more in that direction. Because if they have like gimmick fights where they give someone a title shot because they're a big name, I just think it's just pushing it more into like a business rather than these fighters who are fighting merit, which is it's already been like that, but I think it will get even worse. It will bring more into an avenue where it's like the company, fighters being tools. So if you kind of catch what I'm saying, it's hard to put in the words. I feel like I did a decent job, but I just think it will go more into that path. And next up, the next thing is kind of sports washing. This term first, before we get to that, another point that I forgot. It alienates international fans and international fighters a little bit because of the problems we have going on with ICE right now. I think it kind of contradicts the UFC. I know that UFC is, you don't get politics in the sports. I know people don't like that, but the UFC is political. It's political. Trump has ties with Dana, of course. We're doing this White House event. That makes it political. You look at the UFC roster. 0 American champs. Top contenders. We barely have Americans. None of these guys are American. A couple, Sean O'Malley, Corey Sanhagen. Okay. None of these guys are American up here. None of these guys are American up here except for Max Holloway and Gaethje. None of these guys are American. Again, not many of these guys. It's mainly not many of them. I'd say 89% of top contenders and champs. Or champs are no Americans. They have for Kayla Harrison, but she can't fight there because of her neck. But all the top contenders, mainly all the top contenders here and champs, 90% of them are immigrants or like just from other countries and stuff like that. And what the U.S. is doing right now with ICE, just throwing these people out. I know they're illegal. There's some illegal immigrants. I hate that word because you're on stolen land. But you know, I think it's not great for fans, especially the Hispanics who I feel like are more subject to ICE's protocols, you could say. I think that's another way. And it like I was saying before, sports washing. It's this term I found on TikTok from Azabi Manjay in a video. It says sports washing is using sports to distract from poor reputations, human rights issues, or political problems by investing in teams, hosting events, or sponsoring sports to create a positive global image, with Saudi Arabia often cited for using it to counter criticism of its human rights record. Of course, they invest into UFC as well. They invest into boxing. It's a form of propaganda where a country or entity uses the appeal of sports to whitewash its negative image. Again, the U.S. could be doing that. This brings eyes. Trump's gonna be heavily involved. It's this cool big sporting event, and the fucking World Cup's gonna be there this summer as well. All this stuff is kind of gonna take the eyes out from those conflicts and put it onto sports. Only sports. Oh, USA is doing this crazy shit. Blah blah blah. I think also another way of sports washing that I heard is like in terms of the fans. With you have this event that's like no tickets, no outsiders, only like elites. You could kind of say like rich celebrities, government officials. You have these. It's only those people. It's like very exclusive. You know what I mean? I feel like that pushes the company in a direction more. It's like going to a UFC event is a luxury rather than it's enjoyable. It should be for the real fans. I feel like the ticket price is already outrageous. They're gonna get more outrageous after this because be like, okay, we just had this huge event. This could be a turning point. Huge event brought in the biggest numbers. Blah blah blah. It's like this exclusive event. I feel like it could bring the UFC more in that way, where it's like more exclusivity, sports washing, which is like drawing the real fans out and making it more of a luxury for the elites. You know, because you already know ticket prices. I go to ticket prices. I see Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster. Let's look up UFC 324. So watch party. I don't even know if tickets aren't available for this. Or let's go to UFC.com. Go to UFC.com. I just want to look at the ticket prices for 324. Because the UFC is only going to grow with the Paramount deal and the White House card. So I feel like you get these fighters who are or you get these fans who can't even afford these regular prices, and you're gonna have this huge event where it's only the elites. It's kind of where the point I want to get. I just want to look at the ticket prices. I'm actually curious, and I'm sure maybe some people are as well. I forget what the tickets are like. 400, 500, 400 aren't terrible, but it's like nosebleeds, especially for a UFC event. You can't really see that well from these sections. I've been at T-Mobile Arena for a UFC event. I sat in one of these sections, but for most fans, they can't really afford even 400. Especially you got a flight, you got a hotel, you got to drive, whatever it may be, food, all that shit. So I think this is going to be a problem for UFC. I think especially this last point that I made with the sports washing. The other ones, using fighters as tools, that's always going to be there, but I think it just maybe gets even more, you know? It just brings it more into that avenue. The title fights thing, it's like, yes, it's a problem, but it won't be a permanent problem. But I think the sports washing is the main one when it comes to just with the US and then the UFC kind of making it more of a luxury to go to an event rather than something that more people should be experiencing. So let me know what you guys think. These are some things that I just brainstormed. I'm not this from what I heard from other people, just kind of expanded on, wanted to talk about, wanted to think about it a little more. So if you watch this, let me know what you guys thought, and I'll see you in the next video, which is later tonight.